Hello, this is Patricia from Hayes Sewing Machine Company. We are located in Wilmington, Delaware. Today I'm going to show you how to create your own embroidery design using the Baby Lock IQ Designer program that is built into some of their machines. This is the program that lets you create your own embroidery designs completely from scratch. When you've turned your machine on, we're going to select the IQ Designer icon. This is the particular program that is built into the machine that will let you create your own embroidery designs directly on the machine without having to go to the computer. When you're looking at it, you may notice some icons looking very familiar. It's very similar to a paint program that you have on your computer when you're working with your line or outline properties, as well as your color or fill properties. Whenever I am working with this program, you can use your finger, so I can literally just go ahead and start drawing. You can use the stylus. The stylus is going to help you get some more precise items, or you can also work with a mouse. If you do a mouse, you want it to be a wired mouse as opposed to a wireless mouse, and just something cheap, whatever the cheapest you can find will be fine. You want to plug it into the side port where you would normally plug in your USB stick for your embroidery designs, and that is also very helpful when you're trying to get very precise details. So that would be something I would recommend if you're going to be doing a lot of IQ Designer, is to get a mouse that will be specific for this machine. So right up here we were working with our line, so again we can just go ahead and start drawing things. I can also draw my name, so if I wanted to create like a signature and actually embroider it out for a quilt or a project. This one here is going to be your fills, so I can just select the paintbrush and I can go ahead and just start coloring something in. You also have an eraser, so the eraser comes in different sizes and shapes depending on how big of an area or how detailed you want to be. So if I'm working with a bigger area, go with a bigger eraser. If I'm trying to get some really tiny details and I want to make sure I don't get something else inadvertently, then go with one of the smaller ones. So let's just kind of go a little bit in the middle, and then I'm going to go in and just erase out that coloring that I did. This section here is a section to grab a particular part of your design. So say I wanted to get rid of this and I didn't want to have to erase the whole thing. Once I have this tool selected, that's my select tool, I can click and drag. Can you see how we're getting a little red box around the area? And so I want to make sure that that particular box goes all the way around the area that I want to cut out. Don't go over some extra areas because it will also cut out those pieces too. So make sure you're doing just the particular area that you want to erase or get rid of. You'll see the picture of the scissors, so select the scissors and it will automatically delete that out. What if you wanted to duplicate something? So say I wanted to duplicate my name, so I still have that icon selected. I'm going to touch and hold and drag till my name is selected. This button here is your duplicate button, so we can duplicate it and then you can move it over to another section. This icon is going to be your size, so I can make things bigger or smaller. And then this one here is if I want to rotate and have things going at an angle. I personally am not a very good drawer, so I like to have as much help as possible. So I'm going to clear everything out on the screen, and that way I have a nice blank spot to work with. And I'm going to work with the shapes that are built in to the program. So when we select this, this is kind of what automatically comes up. And this is my preference to work with because this is my outlines. See how they're all outlines of shapes. This one here is a fill of a shape, and this one here is an outline and a fill all together. I don't tend to bother with those two. For the most part, I tend to go with this one just because we can fill in color very easily and still manipulate the design. I'm a little bit lazy, so I try to do things as easy as possible. So for today's project, we're going to select our flower and then we're going to hit OK. And you'll see the flower kind of show up, the little outline. We can bring in another flower. So this is going to be our duplicate button. And you'll notice when it duplicates it, see how it offsets it a little bit. The reason it does that is because if it brought the design right in on top, you wouldn't necessarily know that it brought in a design, and you might just keep clicking that button, and then you have like 10 layers of this particular flower. So by off skewing it a little bit, it's very easy for me to see how many times I have brought it in. We can also hit undo. So let's take out those because I really just want to have 2 of those flowers for the moment. We're going to go into size, and I want to change the size of that second flower to be smaller. So when you're looking at your size, these icons here will let you change the size proportionately. So this one will make the design smaller proportionately, which is what we're going to do for today. This one will make the size bigger proportionately. This will shrink it down vertically or make it bigger vertically. That's your second row. And then your third row has to do with the horizontal aspect if you want to make it narrower or wider. This button here will go back to your default setting, what it was originally when we first brought it in. So if you've played around with it too much and you just want to go back to the regular setting, you can just hit that and it goes back to the default. So we're going to make that second flower smaller, so I'm going to shrink it down. And you'll notice as I'm shrinking it, I do have some sizing going up here. So if I know that I want my flower to be a specific size, I can just watch for it on here. So let's make this inner one about maybe like 3.5. So we're just going to keep pushing that button until we get to about 3.5. Now remember how I said it brings it in kind of off-centered. So when I look at this, I can try to move it around and center it as best as I can. You have your arrows here, so you can use these 9 arrows to move it around. I like to have the machine do as much work for me as possible. So I'm going to hit the center button, that dot in the center, and so it will automatically bring it into the center of the design, the center of the hoop, the center of the screen. It's going to focus everything in that middle area. And you can kind of start to see some of my layering going on right there. So I have my design kind of set how I want it to be. We're going to hit OK, which is going to then take us back to that main screen where we can access our outline fills and our fill, our satin stitches, our decorative fills. So what we're going to do first is fill in some colors. This button here, the piece of paper, is your settings button. So you'll notice that you have 2 papers, and you'll see how that paper has an line underneath it because it's referring to our outlines, and this one has kind of a box behind it because it's referring to our fills. We're now going to go into our region property, which is going to be our fill property, and the default setting is the zigzag or satin stitch. So this is kind of our traditional fill. We can go ahead and select whatever color we want, and then we're going to hit OK, and you can literally just go ahead and start coloring in. However, I am not very good at staying in the lines, and that's a lot of work going all the way around. So my preference over using the paintbrush, which is the default setting, is to actually use the bucket. Now the bucket, as soon as I touch the area where I want it to be filled in, it's going to do it automatically. Ta-da! So that is so much faster. It is hands down my favorite. Then we're going to go ahead and select our next area. You can certainly go ahead and pick another color, and we can fill in the center. But you can also do different types of fills. So this here is going to be your stippling fill. So if we select the stippling fill, you can have the center be stippled, or we can have the outside around the flower be stippled. And then we also have decorative fills. So the decorative fill section is going to let us activate this area. These are decorative fills that are built in. And so you have all of these beautiful different patterns and designs that are in the machine. And so let's go ahead and select number 7. That's our basket weave. We're going to hit OK. Let's select a different color. Oh, I don't even remember what color I had. And we're going to select the inside. And that is now a filled in design. Now, technically, we could just go to kind of the preview section here. You can kind of see what your design looks like. This is what it looks like automatically digitized. But I'm going to show you how to do a little bit more editing. So this section here, this is where we were working with our fill property. Now this top section for our outline property, when I select this icon, there's going to be different line property settings. So that's our satin stitch, which is kind of the default. This is a straight stitch outline. It's actually a double stitch outline. This is a triple bean outline. This is a candle wicking stitch, which looks really pretty. This is a kind of a triangle or diamond one. You have blanket stitch. You have, this looks almost like an overcast or blind hem stitch, just a different version of a blanket stitch or applique style stitch. And then this here are your decorative motifs. So you have all of these different ones that you can choose from if you want the outline to be something different. For today's purpose, I'm just going to keep it a little bit more basic. I am going to select the candle wicking stitch because that I think just looks beautiful. It's one of my favorite ones to do. We're going to hit another color. It doesn't really matter what color you're picking. It's just so you can see the design. We're going to hit OK. Now when I hit OK, you'll kind of see how my fill stuff kind of faded into the background. And I only see really kind of my outline. See how they're highlighted? The pencil is the default, but I don't want to change just one aspect of an outline. I want to change the whole outline. So we're going to go to the bucket. And then I would also recommend zooming in so you can see that line better so we can select it. Now, traditionally, I keep my sound on the machine off, but when I'm doing IQ, I like to keep it on. And the reason for it is this. Can you hear that knocking sound? So that means that I did not select something properly. So when I do, you have kind of like a click. If you don't select it, you have a knocking. And that is an easy way for me to know whether I have the outline selected or not, just because visually it can be hard to see. This is also another reason why I like to change to a different color. As soon as I touched it, do you see how that changed red from black? So another visual cue that's easier for me to see. Then we're going to go back into the settings here, and we have the satin stitch already selected for one of the other ones, but I just want to change the color just because when we go into the next pages it's a little bit easier to see. And we're going to select that particular inside line. When we hit next, let's actually go back and let's zoom out so we can see the whole thing. And we're going to hit next. And this particular screen is a section I'm going to just skip over for the moment. We'll come back to it a little bit later. This here is going to be your preview. So this is where we can go to save the design to see what it looks like. Now, originally I just skipped over this section, But what happens when we go into the preview is it does give you a prompt. So it says the IQ designer will not be saved. Okay, to continue, I would encourage you to hit cancel and save your design. And to save your design is this pocket. And now what happens with the pocket is when you have a design like this is technically not an embroidery design yet. This is still a working file, so there's really no stitches that have been added yet. IQ Designer is all about creating your own designs. You cannot edit embroidery designs. So get into the habit of saving your design as a working file. What that will let you do is if there's something you don't like or you want to go back and change it, you now can, rather than having to recreate a design from scratch. So I'm going to select the pocket. You can save it to either the sewing machine or to your USB stick. Either way is fine. I'm just going to go ahead and save it to the sewing machine. And then go ahead and hit preview. And so now it's going to come out and it's going to show us what this design looks like as an embroidery design. Now this is where you can kind of see some information about the design. So you can see how big it is, so 6.61 inches. You can see how many stitches are in it, so about 22,000. How many minutes? 46 minutes, because we do have a fairly large design and quite a bit of some satin stitch in there. There are 4 colors, and then you have the breakdown of your colors here. If you select the hoop right here will give you a visual representation of what your embroidery design looks like in relation to your embroidery hoop. Now you have different hoops selected at the bottom, so you can select different hoops just to get better visual. Ah, do you hear that knocking sound? There are going to be some hoops that you cannot select because the design is too big. Remember, this design was almost 7 inches, so we will not be able to look at a 4x4 inch hoop or a 5x7 hoop because the design is too big to fit within that area. We can also zoom in, so if you wanted to see the design a little bit bigger. And then what's also really cool, and I would recommend kind of doing this when you're first creating your own designs, just to kind of get into seeing what the design looks like as it stitches out. You'll actually start picking up little cues of things you might like or things you might like to change. So this right here is your stitch simulator, and the stitch simulator, when I hit play, will literally simulate the stitches, how the design is going to stitch out on the screen before we take a single stitch. Now where this is helpful when you're first starting to embroider is it gives you a better understanding of how embroidery designs work, how they stitch out, how layers happen, and so you get a better understanding of what works well and what doesn't. Now right off the bat, because I've been embroidering for a while, one of the things that I am noticing right now is I have large areas of satin stitch and there's nothing under it. There is no underlay. There's no understitching. There's no structure behind or underneath that satin stitch area to give me a really nice sew out. So that is something that I need to fix before I actually stitch out. I'm gonna go into speed 2 just so it goes a little bit faster. You also have speed 3, and it's also just kind of fun seeing what it looks like as it, sews out your stitch that you just created. We're going to hit OK, and we're going to hit return. And I want to go back to this screen, which we kind of passed over. Now this particular screen lets you do some more detailed work with your embroidery design that you're creating. So when we are working with this particular design, there were 4 elements. Remember, we had 2 different fills and then 2 different outlines. So you can use this arrow here to kind of scroll through the different sections of your design. So I want to make sure that I have that satin stitch selected, that fill stitch, that was the blue, because remember how I said there was no underlay. Now, so down at the bottom, we're going to ignore these for the moment. This is really the one I want to focus on. When you have a lot of satin stitch area, the default setting for the underlay, or in this case they call it the undersewing, is off. So we want to actually turn that on, and that will give us a better quality embroidery design. So I'm going to hit preview. Oh, see how it gives me the prompt, do you want to save it? So we're going to hit cancel, and I'm going to save it into my memory. And you really want to get into the habit of saving your design. You're better off saving it more often than you need to and not needing it, rather than, oh, I really needed the design but I never saved it. So we're going to go into preview again, and we're going to go to the hoop again. Let's zoom in, and then I'm going to do that slow redraw for you again. Now notice the difference with my satin stitch area. Can you see how it's creating some structure underneath? And what that does is it helps give it a area of stitches that have already sewn out, so when we go to do our satin stitch on top, it actually lays flatter. It doesn't pucker or buckle. So you really want to, any big areas of like the fill stitches, you want to turn that on. So just kind of get into the habit of checking for this section and turning on the underlay. That's kind of the biggest thing with big satin stitch areas that I would recommend doing. We're going to hit OK. Once we're happy with the design, we're going to hit set. Now you get another pop-up box that says converted to the embroidery pattern and IQ Designer will be exited. OK to continue embroidery edit screen. So we're going to hit cancel and see how you have memory. So memory here, we're going to save it again, but this time it's actually saving it as an embroidery design. So when we were in the first section, we were saving it as a working file for IQ. The second time we're saving it, it's now saving it as an embroidery design. And it's actually saving it in 2 different spots on the machine. When you're working with IQ design working file, that is saved in the IQ area. When we're saving it as a embroidery design, it actually has stitches, it's ready to embroider. It's going to be in our embroidery section, and I'll show you that later. So we're going to hit set, and so now it's actually leaving the IQ designer completely, and we're going to be going into our embroidery screen. So this is also why these prompts come up. As a reminder, make sure, yes, you definitely want to leave, because now things are going to change. So get into the habit. If you didn't save, go ahead and hit memory so you can save. All right, we're going to tell it OK. And now this is going to be what you are used to. This is your regular embroidery screen. And then when you're ready to embroider, we're gonna, if you wanted to like add things, you could actually go in and like add a name or add another design. I'm just gonna hit embroidery. And there is what you are used to seeing. You have your breakdown of your colors. Go ahead, thread up your first color, hoop up your fabric, and go ahead and start stitching it out. I'm going to go back to home, and it's going to say OK to cancel the current pattern. We can just hit cancel. We're going to select the embroidery screen, and down here these are designs that are saved to your embroidery machine. So we're going to select the embroidery machine, and there is our embroidery file. So if you want to pull it up and embroider it out, we can go ahead and select it, and you can stitch out. Now, what if you wanted to change something on this design? So we can't do it in this embroidery area. We have to do it in the IQ area. And remember, I've saved that design multiple times. So when we go to IQ Designer, we're going to look at the pockets down at the bottom. You have two pockets, one to put a design into and one to take a design out of. So we're going to do the pocket that is the arrow out because we want to pull a design out. We're going to go to the sewing machine because that's where my design was that I have saved. And now you can see that I have saved this design a lot because it's a one I use for teaching classes, and here's like some other things I had created, so you kind of can scroll through. You do have a little meter here, so it shows me how many designs I have in the saved area, and you can also go in and delete things. So if I didn't want all of these, you can just hit the delete button and just delete them out. The most recent design that you saved is always going to be the first one. And again, this is why I save. Go ahead and save it as many times as you want, because you can always go back and delete. But you can't work with a design that you haven't saved. So again, you're better off saving as much as possible. So we're going to select our design. That was my most recent design. And we're going to select set. So now this is going to show me what the design looks like. That's what I had created. Now this is still the working file, but I can go in and make changes. And you can kind of make changes on two different screens. You can either do it on this screen, or we can go onto this screen and you can make changes here. So that's up to you, and you'll kind of find which ones you want to work with. So say I wanted to change this middle section. I didn't want that basket weave. Say I wanted to do a stipple stitch. So I can either select my properties here, select my stipple, select a color, select my bucket, and then touch it, or I can change it on this screen. Remember how we use the arrows to toggle through different parts of our design. So we're going to toggle through until we get to our basket weave, and then you're going to just touch this icon. That's like your properties box. See how you get a very similar box pop up? So I can change my stippling, and then let's select, you can select another color or you can keep it the same, won't really matter. But see how now that has changed. So if I go into preview, I'm going to hit OK. So that's going to be what my stitch looks like with the stippling in the center now. And it looks really pretty, but say I wanted to make some changes. You can make that stippling denser so it's closer together, or you can make it farther apart. So let's hit return, and we have some extra icons down here. So this here is the density, so we're going to select that, and 0.2 is the default. Let's like go up to 0.5, and we're going to hit set. We're going to hit preview, and can you see how that is now more open? Now we can also do the opposite. We can go down and we can make it tighter. And so now when we hit preview, so this is what our design will look like with the tighter stipple. So you can kind of play with it, edit it, make it look how you like. So go ahead and play, have fun. You don't necessarily need to stitch out every single embroidery design that you create. I would recommend stitching out some of them just because you will notice different things as you start creating your own designs. You notice what it looks like on the screen and how it looks, how it behaves on actual fabric and thread. And so you get a better correlation. But make sure you spend time playing, because that's going to be how you kind of build up your comfortability, getting more used to the icons. But the sky's the limit. Go ahead and just have fun and create your own embroidery designs. So hopefully you have enjoyed this tutorial and it's been helpful for you working with IQ Designer. IQ Designer is a fabulous program, but it does have so many different things you can create that sometimes you don't necessarily know where to start or what you can do. So subscribe to our channel so that way you can get notifications when we do new videos about IQ Designer. And I also wanted to show you some of the other tutorials that are available for purchase from Baby Lock, and I will put the links to these different items in the description below as well. So this is a physical book that Baby Lock has put out called Mastering IQ Designer, and one of the things that I do like about this book is it does talk about the different parts of IQ Designer, and it also talks about the different features that are available in different machines. A lot of people don't realize that there's actually different versions or different levels of IQ Designer depending on what machine you have. Obviously, the higher in the line your machine is, the more capabilities it will have. So one of the nice things with this book is it actually has a little cheat sheet. So it shows you the different models. And then when we go into this comparison chart, it does also give you kind of a breakdown of what each machine can do. And then as you're looking at projects, so like this is a particular project, it will actually give you a machine requirement section, so which machine you can use in order to do this project. And they really go by like step by step directions, which is fabulous. That makes it so much easier for you because IQ Designer does have some technical things. It's, you know, very similar to like a computer program. You kind of have to do things correctly for it to work. So that's the advantage of having like a reference book. This is a really good tutorial. It goes step by step. Baby Lock also has a Love of Knowledge membership program for their online classes. They have literally over 1,000 videos on their online classes, and they have quite a bit. I want to say maybe like 20 or so for IQ Designer specifically. So you can sign up for their Love of Knowledge, and they call it SoEd classes. This is a 2-year membership, so you have access to all of their classes for 2 years. So you can watch the ones on IQ Designer, or you can watch all of the other ones as well. They have project classes, they have technique classes, so that opens up a lot more of instruction for you as well. There is also a educator called Salima Jeffers that she has put out these series of instructional sets. She is up to version 7, volume 7. And so each volume she talks about different techniques. So like fancy fills and shapes, that's kind of like what we were doing today. She goes into a little more detail. Simply scanning, this is if you have the scanning bed on the Solaris, or even with the Altair and the Meridian, how you can take a picture with your phone and be able to do your own designs. In the hoop fund, so create your own embroidery designs completely in the hoop. Applique, mug rugs, quilting, and applique quilting. So what happens with each of these guys is she has usually about 5 or 6 different projects that she puts onto this collection. They're on a USB stick, so it's not actually an embroidery design, it's directions. So she has a PDF file of the directions physically on the USB stick, so that way you can put it into your computer and then you can print out the directions or download it to your smart device if you didn't want to print it. I really like printing them, so that way I can have kind of a page by page and step by step. It's a little bit easier for me. And then she does also have a video, not of every single project, but of one of the projects on here. So these are also really nice because, again, they give you kind of step-by-step printed information that you can follow. And I will put the links for these in our description below. So that way, if you're interested in purchasing them, you can. And again, subscribe to our channel so that way you can watch more of our IQ Designer videos and learn a little bit more and hopefully get inspired of what you can do with this really amazing software program that's built into the Baby Locks.